Hello everybody, this is Simon with the final normal mode video for Mega Man Zero. As you can see from the video length, we'll have plenty of time to talk about a few things I want to address. First though, the last time we're going to see CL for a while. Her final send-off has a nice piece of foreshadowing in it. Zero will indeed not destroy Neo Arcadia today. Yes. Which is perfectly fine, as I'm sure the countless innocent humans living in it would object. As for his coming back, we'll see. This final stage is a trendsetter for the rest of the series, and I hate it for that. Because it's a refight level with the basic setup: normal segment for boss fights, normal segment for boss fights, normal segment, final boss. I have two major problems with that, and I hope you will allow me to expand on that while I murder these idiots with their weaknesses. First of all, I understand the idea behind refights. Mega Man games are in large part defined by their really good boss fights, and especially so the Zero games. Having an opportunity to fight these fun battles again is great, and it allows you to play around with weaknesses. Not that much of an argument here, as it's purely elements and not weapons, but still. However, I strongly disagree with the notion that the refights have to be mandatory. Let's look at it from the perspective of an inexperienced player, let's call him Bob. Bob will have had big enough trouble getting to this point already and likely struggled against any and all bosses so far, usually only succeeding with weaknesses anyway. Now, good news, all but one of the refights here are the bosses with elemental affiliations, except for Hanu Machine getting the short end of the stick, ironically, meaning they have a weakness. This still means that Bob will have trouble, as it's the exact same fights he already had to suffer through. Or maybe Bob has gotten better at them, but still not good enough to really enjoy them. Either way, it's tedious and not fun. Let's switch perspective to a more experienced player, let's call him, Simon. Simon can slice apart the bosses on hard mode without using their weaknesses, and most of the time even without getting hit. Simon would be happy to revisit his favorite fights because they are fun whenever he wants. What Simon doesn't want is having 8 idiots which he can beat in his sleep block his progress to the final boss which he can't sleep through. So he will of course not toy around on his way there and try and finish them as quickly as possible. It still takes too long, and Simon doesn't have a second of fun unless it involves burning that fucker Anubis to a crisp. Again, tedious and boring. I have seriously never heard of a player liking refights, no matter the skill level. This series tradition should have been excised like block puzzles and Quickman lasers were, and moved instead to a separate boss rush mode like the Castlevania games do it nowadays. Now to my second and far bigger gripe. Right after I have finished with the 8 refights, there will be the final boss. Let's take up Bob's perspective again. He will have finally made it through all these boss fights he didn't like, and he might have used a few elves to heal him up, ready to stock up again for the final battle. But there is no pause. Most likely the final boss will completely destroy Bob, again and again, because unlike the fights before, he has never seen him. Learning the guy will probably take longer than the time allotted to Bob by his remaining lives, some of which might already have been drained. Back to the very start of Neo Arcadia's 3rd stage, refights again. Hopefully Bob won't quit out of sheer frustration. It's like a JRPG where you don't have a save point in front of the final boss, you have to do the whole entire dungeon again. Simon on the other hand hasn't had much trouble with the fights, but he's critically bored. And there is a big problem with the final boss. As it's such an unfun slog towards it, Simon isn't really practiced at it. Far less than with bosses that have a 2-minute stage preceding them. So he might actually have trouble. Not even getting through, as his resources aren't drained, but getting a high rank, a tall order on the hard to practice on final boss alone. After a 10-minute level only consisting of the toughest challenges in each level not to get hit on, that's very funny. What I'm saying is that at my level of skill there is no way I'd ever get a high rank on this final stage. It's not that big of a complaint, but it still bugs me. And even discontinuing the ranking, this final boss is great fun. Why should I only be allowed to fight it after beating up 8 guys I'm just not that interested in? I always respected some classic games for having a hard level break between their refight stage and the final boss level, why not here? Or maybe do it like Mega Man 5, which did have a boss after the refights, but that one was pretty easy and decidedly not the final one with multiple phases, toughest challenge in the game, all that. Wait a second. Here is a shortcut, but I'm going to show off the entire level before. So, anyway, basically, Inti, I love you for making all of these great bosses, just give me a fucking break. We're not on the NES anymore, where insanely long gauntlets were meant to kill you over and over again to extend game time. Okay, on this middle part itself, it is nothing to write home about really, as you can skip most of it and it is just there to impede your progress a little more with a few enemies which can hit you and destroy your rank. Back to the script. Now that we've reached the second part of the refights, with I think you can guess who, let me talk a little about story. For example, did you know that the 4 Guardians we're fighting right now were created using the original Mega Man X's robot DNA, which is also his soul, which was split into 5 parts? If you have never heard about that, and it doesn't make any sense to you, don't worry, I just learned it 3 seconds before typing this sentence. There is an insane amount of backstory for this game, mostly hidden in Japan-only manga and other supplementary material, which most here will never have seen, including me. There is of course a wiki for that, but I'll spare you simply reading off all the insane plot points and just focus on those that explicitly explain what happens in this game. Fortunately that is done pretty quickly, as we're not supposed to know about a lot of the stuff until we've played a 3rd game. This is more meant as a recap. So, Sigma, the main antagonist from the X series, was finally completely defeated some time ago, giving X the opportunity to build an utopia he had always dreamed of. Neo Arcadia, where humans and Reploids would live together in peace, the borders between them slowly crumbling as we've seen in the thread. However, stuff happens, which makes Ciel think that it's necessary to copy X's original body. She uses the same technology used to create the Guardians who already exist. Copy X is now the absolute ruler, as X was before, with the Guardians as his loyal subordinates commanding the different parts of a robot army. Contrary to X, however, his copy doesn't hesitate to use questionable means to achieve the same ends. So when an energy crisis breaks out, he blames it on the Reploids and mercilessly pursues them, labeling any who cross his way maverick. This costs countless lives, and a resistance forms, led by Ciel, who has realized her error. She knows that the only one able to stop Copy X is the legendary hero Zero, who after the stuff I mentioned was sealed away. Thus this game begins, Zero is awakened and someone who we now should have identified as the original X in Cyber-Elf form gives him his saber and the mission to kick Zeria's butt. While he defends the resistance time and time again, Ciel is working on a way to solve the energy crisis, which was the beginning of all the problems, discounting the fact that Copy X is simply insane. After every attempt to crush the resistance proved futile, and all the Guardians have been defeated one by one, X then leads Zero towards the heart of Neo Arcadia, telling him to get rid of the flawed copy. And basically, the Guardians fighting us again right now does make sense in a story context. It's just, I still do not like the refights in general. I wanted to talk a little more about Phantom's fight especially. As you can see, I did avoid using charged attacks and the sword especially during his normal fight, because it is very hard to hit just his copies and not him, do not hit his copies and just himself, yes. On the other hand, when he's doing this attack, it's perfectly safe to charge the saber and kill him with it. Don't do anything stupid, Phantom, it's not like you could stop me anyway. Your buddies won't and you won't. Stop, Phantom, no, no. Ow. So yes, Phantom definitely just killed himself, damaging Zero a little bit in the process. It is actually possible to die from that, and is of course possible to dodge it by just staying away from him. But I think it is really a nice touch in showing how loyal they really are, and how much the Guardians do think that they are doing the right thing. In fact, as they had pieces of X's soul used, and if I have understood it correctly, not Copy X, they are actually far better at being human and emphasizing and just trying to do what the original X did and make a credible utopia for humans. They're just following the wrong guy. And yes, it is kind of sad that the true leader, the most valiant of them all, which I saved for last, is kind of a joke, because you can very, very easily cheese him by just doing this over and over again. Too bad. But yeah, Zero has proved himself the legendary hero time and time again, by overcoming all of his shortcomings at the start after his rude awakening, and crushing the Guardians, which are supposed to be far more advanced than he is. Too bad that I don't have a charged saber, huh? This final stretch is pretty brutal actually, and as you can see I'm not that practiced at it, just by virtue of never really reaching this part often, which, as I have already mentioned, is kind of a problem I have with this insanely long stage. I would be fine with it if it just ended now, but as said, we are on our way to the final boss himself, who should be perfectly clear by now. And one final asshole tank, if you jump down there immediately he will hit you and you will be sad, because there is no real way. Okay, you could go back all the way and farm, but it's just not fun. So, ready to take this to the leader himself? Bet. You bet we are. You guys again. Your leg feeling better already? As you can see, Phantom missing for good. Yes, he is dead, definitely. But we have done enough fights. Yeah, by the way, I completely forgot to mention, these three were built from X's original body, which you can see on the right, and the Pantheon enemies, the normal Mook guys who just shoot you 3 times, are also built from that template. But not with the soul or anything. Yes, just the humans. This is the big problem with Copy X's motivations. He thinks the original X just wanted peace between humans and Reploids, but he focuses far too much on the humans and ignores the rights of the Reploids completely, perverting the original idea, which Zero rightfully calls him out on. Oh yes. This is the best fight in the entire game. I love it from start to finish. He has an insane amount of moves. I'm just going to use the triple rod here to extend it a little. I'm not going to do a very good job about it, but we're going to see more of it later on anyway. So, what you can do is use a dash attack, or more or less a slide dash attack, which can damage you, and the ultimate armor, which he's wearing from the X Games flying charge attack. I don't actually know what it's called offhand. And fortunately I have prepared for this because I didn't want to have a death in there. I'm sorry, but as I already said, it is far too draining for me to try and do the entire stage and then not fuck up on this guy. So yeah, he can switch elements on the fly, and for each element he has a normal and a charged attack. During his switching animation he's invincible, by the way, and you can knock him out of most animations, but some not. So, normal shot, charged electro, normal ice, pretty damn hard to avoid, especially when it hits the wall, charged ice. You've seen normal fire, but this one here he very rarely does, and I'm glad for it because I hate dodging it. And finally, a clean fight using only the triple rod. No elves used here. Even though I still fuck up the timing sometimes and think I will knock him out of the animation, but do not do so. What I really love about this fight is how much he can chain attacks together, and how many different situations you have to adjust to. And it's still very fair, because there is no situation where you definitely have no way of avoiding getting hit. It is completely not luck based, because every mistake will definitely only be your own fault, just by virtue of you having positioned yourself wrongly, you having read his tails badly, you don't knowing where he's going to land and when, and stuff like this, where he does home in on you when you're on the wall, yes. But anyway, back to my original playthrough. Bullshit. Okay, maybe he just regains his memory slowly, but the excuse is just very weak. His body seems to remember. even weaker when you consider some events which are spoiler for 03. But yes, this fight of course is not over. Come on. We seem to have a slight angel motif here. This is also unofficially I think called the Seraph form. And I will use a saber for it, just by virtue of it making the fight go by more quickly, and the fight is not too interesting. So, you have to use the pillars on the side to dodge, and I hate those, because it means one fuck up from you at the wrong moment, especially when you try to climb the pillars while the rings are coming down, or when you get hit by the bottom spike while the fire comes, or anything like that, means that you have a very high potential of plummeting to your doom. Means you have to watch all those three guys babble on a little, and him telling his vision and blah 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 blah, because you cannot skip cutscenes in this game, and the fight isn't that good in my opinion. It has very neat ideas, but overall it is just very unfortunate that you can easily fall down here, for example, and it is kind of tricky to hit him. His hitbox isn't all that well placed in my opinion, and it's just not that fun, as said. The laser attack, by the way, is always aimed at where you are. It looks very scary and I have a hard time avoiding it, but it's not that hard in general. It's just easy to fuck up after all the fluff before. But yes, we've won! Great! And Copy X realizes that he might not be the perfect copy he thought he was. Because indeed, he's too naive. Classical. Neo Arcadia itself is still fine, just the tower will explode now. Pay attention to a little point of light coming down in a second. Just pause the video because it is really going to go by very quickly. Now, did you see it? It was Cyber Elf X escaping with Zero. Yes, this guy. Not so peaceful after all, huh? If you remember a little about the original X's personality, he always hated fighting. Hello. Also an angel motive, but far more subdued. He is actually humble, Copy X was not. And there you have it, the conclusion of this story. Zero has slowly discovered what X was up to while he slept, and his meeting the copy told him everything he needs to know. His exact memories might still be gone, but the two robots' friendship transcends everything. As such, Zero will take up the mantle from X, who no longer can do that, having apparently lost his body. This was more or less an origin story. Ciel woke the legendary hero up, and though his equipment might have been outdated, his memories gone, Zero fought tooth and nail for what he thought was right, and until now his further path is clear. Continue fighting in X's name. Anything Ciel and her resistance did was just a catalyst, though both will grow into their own in future games. To smoothly continue, let me start this retrospective on the LP with the story for once. In case my actually talking about it during these videos wasn't enough of an indicator, I really like it. I think with broad strokes and subtle details, this simple handheld game manages to create a believable game world full of inherent conflict, possibilities and diverse characters with sensible motivations. It very neatly gets rid of the fluff of insanity from the X games, even though they had to rewrite it twice. First when X6 came out before and destroyed its predecessor's relatively neat wrap-up, and a second time when they changed the main antagonist from the original X to a copy. It holding up is almost a miracle, considering how Capcom's writers butchered other, simpler concepts. There is more praise I could heap on it, like how the gameplay reflects Zero's progression from beaten down old robot to credible threat, both in how more powerful you get and in how the enemies treat him. But let's seek neatly into how not only the story seems to be in just far more competent hands now, the entire game is. Capcom would never have done that, is something I've said multiple times in the videos and in the thread, and I really believe that Inti Creates were exactly what the entire franchise needed. While the in-house games, starting from the absolutely abysmal X6, were irredeemable, this new developer had the boldness to cut stupid traditions completely out, make callbacks sensible and not annoying, and basically form the basic formula into something far more closely resembling a modern, polished game. I love the way they handle weapons, even their leveling, how logical it is having two out at the same time, how the elements still allow you to customize your playstyle, how the ranking system is finally transparent and not half arbitrary and fully ignorable. It's a fresh wind blowing which shakes up things without toppling them over. Still, with the sheer scope of the changes also come problems. Everything I mentioned has them. The weapon leveling is far too slow. The fire element is worthless and ice and lighting almost the same. Ranking high is a chore because it's far too demanding at points. The X skills are very hit and miss and basically punish you for being good with no reward. And at least your first playthrough will have the game tell you again and again that you're really bad. It also doesn't work with the elf system at all, which is downright horrible in every aspect. I don't think I need to further expand on that. These are all details dragging down a game which has a very solid core. After all, the controls are as perfect as you could imagine, everything feels just so right, from dash jump arcs to the sword's hitbox. However, there are also major negatives. There's also a major negative, definitely not a detail in the game's disfavor: the level design. There is barely a level here which I wouldn't rate at best mediocre, at worst shit. In a serious boasting really good level design, it sticks out as a huge downside and I won't sugarcoat it. It's again an extension of Inti trying lots of new things, appreciated but completely misguided. The engine is sublime, it doesn't need gimmicks to make good levels. No time limits, no escort missions, no bomb collecting. How good it really is shows in the boss fights, which are deliberately put at the end because it's really what sells all the Zero games for me. While some are still a little shaky, most of the Zero 1 bosses are really good and fun fights. Full-on action, high-speed entertainment with you in total control once you figure out how they tick. Getting good at the game is highly rewarding just for being able to dance circles around them, and it's a message I want to close my mini review with. The Zero games are hard, yes. They take a lot of getting used to. But it's not like you don't have tools to tide you over until practice kicks in, even though the tools are flawed. Once you start getting the hang of it, all the games, even this one, are among the most satisfying platformers to play through, at least for me. Zero 1, for all its rough patches, paved the road for far better games to come, and I highly respect it for that. Oh yes, and it's also definitely fun in its own right when it forgets about all its bullshit dragging the experience down. This was Simon with the Let's Play Mega Man Zero, and I much look forward to presenting you the next game. You'll see about more hard mode videos and a little extra content for this one. PS, I won't show it off, but this game has a New Game Plus, which is pretty awesome actually. Elves gotten and paid for carry over as do the rest of your stocks. You do have to level up the weapons again though. I unlock hard mode again because I can't get the game to save properly while still using save states, and the mod cards thing is a Zero collection extra. Thanks for your attention up until the end.